How receptive or open are your people to change? This conversation came up recently, just this morning. In fact, I was having a presentation briefing call with one of my clients who's booked me to speak at her conference next month. And I always do this, always do a presentation briefing call beforehand, because I want to know a little bit more about their organization, their event, what sort of outcomes they want, what key messages they want me to emphasize, how my presentation fits in with the rest of the program. And one of the questions I always ask is, how open are your people to change? Because we all know there's a lot of change happening around us externally. You don't need a futurist to tell you that, and that's only going to increase. So we as leaders need to make sure that our teams are also at least open to change and ideally embracing change, so that we can keep pace with the change that's required, so that we can respond to what's happening externally. And this particular client said to me, well, there's a mix. There's some people who are open to change. There's some people who are really embracing it, but we've also got some people who are holding back and maybe resisting it. And she gave me a percentage, which is not important, because the point I want to make is that this is true of every team. I bet in your team you've got some people who are open to change and maybe even embracing it, but there might be one or two, or if you're unlucky, a few more, who are actively resisting it and pushing back against it. So you want to build a culture of change agents, but not everybody is at the same place on the change journey. So how do you build that culture? Well, it doesn't happen overnight. You can't click your fingers and say, we're now all going to be open to change or embracing change. But there are some specific strategies that you can use. And I was reminded this morning when we were talking about this, about a book that I read a long time ago. The book's called Switch, by brothers Chip and Dan Heath. It was published, I just looked it up, in 2010, so 15 years ago. And it has a 9-step process, or 9 strategies for creating change. In fact, the subtitle of the book is How to Change Things When Change is Hard. And so I draw from this book and from other sources when I work with leaders and teams about building that culture of change. And you want to know the most useful and the most practical strategy, from what I've found, is one of the strategies one of the ideas or strategies in this book, and it's called Find the Bright Spots. So what the Heath brothers recommend is, if you're trying to create change, rather than trying to do it all at once, look for bright spots. So examples, success stories, case studies of where change has worked well, and then highlight them to the rest of the team. It might be something that one of your team members did really well, and it as part of the change process. It could be that a small group of people created some change. It could even be people from outside your team, but in a way that your team can relate to. So a similar sort of situation. And what you do is you look for these examples and you highlight them. How do you do it? Well, one example is, you might say at the start of each staff meeting, whether you have a weekly meeting or a fortnightly meeting, you might look for a bright spot and highlight it in that meeting. It's just one of the ways that you can get people thinking about change and see that change is possible and can create success. It also doesn't mean that everybody will automatically jump on the change bandwagon just because you highlight 1, 2, or 20 bright spots, but it's part of building that culture of change agents. If you'd like other ways that you can find bright spots and especially highlight them, download my worksheet here, which will give you different ways and different things that you can use to find the bright spots so that you can lead the change. I hope you find it useful. I'll see you in the future.